Welcome to the Fishing Daily podcast, and thank you for joining us again. This is episode 8 of series 4, and in this episode I'll be speaking to Eddie Moore and John Menarry from NIFA, and we'll be talking about the crisis that's affecting the inshore industry in Ireland, and we'll be discussing what's been happening since 2002 and their battle to try and get support for an industry that has been neglected by the government. Welcome, John, and welcome, Eddie. We're here to talk about what's happening with the inshore industry in Ireland, and I suppose we'll kick off about your press release that was out yesterday, and you're talking about the lack of support from the government and his department. Could we have a little bit of a history about what's happened in the past few years?
Well, I suppose, Oliver, it kind of goes back to, we have to go back as far as 2022, the winter 2022, when the first signs of this started to materialise with the closure of the processor stopped taking shrimp at a critical part of the season back in the winter 2022, and we asked the minister for an emergency meeting to see what could be done, and he promised he'd look into it and made all sorts of commitments that he'd look into it and help us and everything else, and nothing materialised, and we got into 2023 and guys struggled on, and then we had the issues with the crab market last year. It was factories were late opening last year. When they did open, and prices were on the floor, and then factories then closed early, so we had not even a condensed season last year. We didn't really have a season last year, and we met with the minister in November 2023, and we actually went to Dublin to meet him, and again told that he's listening to us and he hears what we're saying, and he's looking at it and trying to do things for us. And NIFA went before the GOC, the Joint Directors Committee, in January 2024, the 24th of January actually this year, to sort of try and make our issues public, because we feel that when you're in the room with the minister, he tells you what you want to hear, and once you go out the door, that's sort of your woes and your issues are locked on the door behind you, and they don't get out there, and it doesn't matter then. Nobody knows about it. So we went to the Pollock McLaughlin got us into the GOC this year, and we went then to meet more TDs in the AV room in the Dáil in February. Our chairman, Michael Desmond, spent a lengthy time speaking with the minister at the fishing show in Limerick this year, again stressing the issues we had. Again, we met with the minister and his officials on the 16th of April. And so we're talking now, we're nearly 2 years into this, and we're still being told that they're looking at it and they're trying to come up with this and that and the other. And we were totally ignored and left out of the bar funding when it came to Brexit. So we got no supports there worth talking about. And now we've had 18 months of the economic problems in Europe, leaving a poor market return for live shellfish. The only kind of fishery we have left now, after being excluded from other fisheries, through no fault of our own, is purely ministerial policy that excludes us from other fisheries such as mackerel and herring. So we're getting pigeonholed into the shellfish fisheries, and now that they're coming under serious pressure due to market issues in France and Spain and elsewhere in continental Europe, due to mostly to the war in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis over there. We have it with fuel and energy over here. We're suffering from that too, but we were told that we couldn't get supports due to the crisis in Ukraine. We pointed out to the minister that yes, there was a scheme in place, and by the time the minister actually agreed that yes, there was something in place, we were told, well, oh sorry, it's too late. Now this year we've learned that that scheme has been extended to the end of this year. And we've been told by the minister and his officials, well, it's too late, we wouldn't have anything in place in time. So that's kind of what prompted us to release our statement yesterday, because we have to make the public aware of what's happening in other TDs, because the man that's supposed to be helping us, whether he is or he isn't looking at it and trying to come up with something, it's taken far too long and far too slow. And it's got to a case now where guys are having to sell their boats. Some of our members have sold their boats already, others are for sale. If they're lucky, they're going to be able to sell them. If they can get out in time, they'll be lucky. But further wits end, we have nowhere else to go at this stage. So We don't know where to turn.
For example, what's it like day to day? This is the thing that that people should hear. What's it just like day to day for you? Yeah, living with this at the moment.
Well, for my own case, it's gone from a case of lobsters being €32 a kilo now in April time, and now come the middle of May, you're down to 16, 17. They're down to €15 this week. Like, so it's two good weeks of sunshine in the middle of April, and shellfish prices just collapsed. They was cut in half, down 50%. Crab, if you can sell them, they're down, and there's always the worry. You can go fishing all weekend, will you have a market for them at the end of the week? So you're always on edge. You don't know. You're fishing all week. You're afraid to ask your buyer. Number one, is he going to take them? And number two, if he does, what are you going to get to them? So you're under pressure all the time. It's constant worry.
Yeah, and like that's a massive drop. That's like somebody earning €1,000 a week coming down to, down to 100 or 150, €200 a week. Like it's a massive hit.
She's on the other side of it as well, Oliver. Then you have nothing else has come down. Everything that the fisherman is buying, from fuel, bait, diesel, or food for the boat and everything else, everything is increasing in price. And the price they're getting for their product, the end day, what product they can actually sell, is halved in prices. Down lobster 14.50 in this side of the country this week. I mean, I don't know how people are going to sustain this. Those that are fishing are actually, nearly all the boats are targeting lobster at the moment. Lobster is a fishery that's been seasonal, but at the moment, the amount of gear that's fishing lobster, give it another couple of weeks, if the weather if this summer that's predicted does actually appear in 2 or 3 weeks' time, the worries are that the lobster won't be there. Like, what are guys actually going to do then? As John has raised there, like, I mean, there's guys having to contemplate selling their boats through no fault of their own, I might add. The problems we're facing now, NIFA highlighted these problems, as John said there, as far back as 2022. And even further than that, NIFA members went to crab FIPS. They went to, and they highlighted all these problems, that the fact that all these boats are funneled into one fishery, they only have one fishery, that it was going to be unsustainable. So for somebody to say that they're coming up with a scheme or they're contemplating doing something about it, I don't know, it's very hard for guys to live horse and get grass. I suppose that's kind of the mentality out there at the moment. You'd kind of wonder, is there something else waiting in the long grass behind all this? Like, it's hard to believe that people would let it go to this stage.
Yeah, and there's no alternatives. This is it. You're looking at, as you said, they funneled the inshore fleet down into ghettos, basically, of what they're fishing. The Pollock's gone. Once upon a time there was a season. Everybody had fished a season, and it'd be herring, salmon, crabs, lobsters, whatever it was. But the idea just to pigeonhole fisheries hasn't worked, has it?
Well, definitely not down here in the Southwest Line, because I think the straw that brought the camel's back this year was the Pollock, because and in my opinion, if somebody's going to sit and tell me that this is being done for sustainability levels or for the good of the stocks or something like that, I can't sit here and believe that, because every angling boat in the country can land whatever fish they seem to want to land. Nothing seems to affect them in the line of their landings. So for somebody to say that it's for the good of the stock or for stock management or whatever else, is very hard to say that, when you have another sector that can basically catch what they want. It's a free for all if they want to. No, God bless them, and they have been probably doing it for years. I'm not sitting here saying that I want it stopped, but for somebody to say that it's for the sustainability of the stock or for stock management, that flies out the window. So I can't see that there is an issue with Pollock stocks. I believe that it's the method that they used in coming to the conclusion that they actually came to for the banning of the Pollock, and that's where the issues lie, not the actual stock itself. But the problems I see is you have lost the only other avenue that guys had when the pot fishery did get slacker, when they could diversify into that. And I mean, you were talking about most guys in this area and probably the whole coast, it was a hook and line fishery, the Pollock, because the net fishery guys couldn't make money with the seals. So the seals issue was a fierce issue with nets, but so it was actually a very sustainable fishery because they were doing it with hook and lines. So they're after losing that. That's major.
Yeah, and we're just have touched quickly upon the method that they used to estimate the stock. And when you're using hook and line, you can't use a beam trawl generally in the area where you'd find Pollock, can you? Like from my experience, you find Pollock and around rocks and then around wrecks. You know, it's a beam trawl would be something you'd use in a more open setting, wouldn't you?
Well, any time I was ever trawling, if there was white Pollock inside in it, if the skipper came to the wheelhouse, somebody'd be speaking to you because you were too close to some stone. So and to use a clean foot drop, and somebody's going to tell you that that's what they use for a survey to find Pollock. Sure, mother of God, he'd want to be dying of old age before they'd find Pollock inside in the clean ground. But look, it is what it is. We are where we are, but I don't know. The sign seems to be it's great when it's against the fishermen, but it seems to be doing a world of damage. I mean, if they're going to do it right. It's the way I look at it.
Well,
you see with the Pollock, a lot of the decision was based on the landing figures. So the Inshore doesn't land a lot. A lot of fishermen land them, but they don't land a lot. So we're getting punished now because we didn't land a lot of fish. So the landings were down, and more so if the quota was cut continually. So if your landings went down, you cut the quota, there was less quota, so there's less fish to land. So what happens? Your landings goes down. So they go, oh, we were right, the landings have gone down. So they cut the quota again. And you cut the quota again, your landings go down. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The chart is only going to go one way. If you keep cutting the quota, the landing graph is only going to go one way, it's down, and they're going to go, we were right, we knew this was happening, we were right to cut the quota. And it's a back end again, accountability. It doesn't affect them. If they're right, fine and grand. But if they're wrong, there's no accountability. The fishermen suffer. You know?
Yeah, that's what you call it. It's for me, looking at it, you sort of go, it's not very secure what their excuse for this. Like, you know, you've pointed out there basically what's happened, but yet no, the department and the minister doesn't seem to be listening to what is actually common sense.
Like nobody has done surveys. Like nobody has come to the Inshore fleet to do surveys or anything like that. We know the data for the Inshore sector is poor. That's not through any fault of our own. There's sales notes and everything else there. We're sick to the teeth highlighting issues with them, and they're not right, and we know there's flaws with them. Yet they're going to be used against us again. It's the same for the salmon. The scientists, it's a situation with the salmon where the scientists couldn't be wrong. They said we had to stop fishing because the stocks were low, and if we stop fishing, they'd come back. But they stopped us fishing, the stocks didn't come back, and now the scientists can say, well, Jesus, boys, aren't we lucky we stopped it, or it'd be 10 times worse. You know, it's not the fishermen, what the fishermen were catching was never the problem. And they're never going to own up to the issue of what the issues with the salmon is, because they don't have to, because they were right. Even though they were wrong, they can say they were right.
Pollock, though, Oliver, the going back to the Pollock, like, I mean, it was the shock of it, or the awe of it. I mean, it was like a bombshell dropped overnight. Within the space of a month, guys were gearing up to go pollock fishing, and then on the other side of that month, guys were told, sorry, by catch only. I mean, how can this, be allowed to happen? Surely to God that I know if in any other industry, take a farming sector or whatever else, if guys were doing some particular thing farming and they turned around and told them, sorry, you can't do it anymore, there'd be uproar, there'd be uproar. So I don't know how I mean, here in the southwest, you have their lads here doing surveys there with the Marine Institute there and the seal deprecation and stuff like that. I mean, they're all well and good. They're a great thing to be done. But I mean, they could have actually done a proper survey on the actual stocks. They had the boats here that were actually doing different surveys. Them surveys had nothing in the world to do with the actual banning of the pollock. They could have turned around and got a few more boats and actually just assessed the stock properly. I mean, the boats were gearing up to do it. And we go back to our original point. If the stocks are in that catastrophic situation, what in the name of God is another sector doing fishing away as norm? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It seems to be, it's like a death of 1,000 cuts to Inshore. It's one thing after another. And my biggest worry is there is only one thing left, and that's hanging by a thread now.
The UK government is offering the fishermen a compensation scheme. Was anything offered like that to you?
No, we did raise it through NIFA at a meeting with the minister, where England, I think was at Cornwall there, the Cornish boats got, I can't remember the actual figures now off the top of my head, but we did raise it, but no, there was nothing like that offered to the inshore boats. So we find it hard enough, Oliver, to get support for the situations we're in. It's next to near impossible to get anything.
Well, Hildegard Naughton was saying on behalf of Charlie McConlough, because he wasn't in the dial on Tuesday, when Patrick McLaughlin made a plea to them, she said that there was a scheme coming in place. What is that going to be too late for you if it ever does develop?
What is the scheme? I mean, the scheme is a scheme is a scheme. I mean, what is it? It's hard to know. We've been banging our head against the wall since. I mean, we highlighted this, as John said there, back in 2022. But I mean, we've seriously highlighted the difficulties. The last two meetings with the minister, one the 28th of November. I mean, we pleaded with him, and all we basically got after that was told that the pollock were being banned. It was like another cut. We met him again there I suppose, when was the last meeting, John? Was it
16th of April?
April, yeah, mid-April.
To discuss the issues in the inshore sector.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's echoing. We're back to scratch. I don't know. I thought first of all that they didn't realize, or they didn't contemplate the seriousness of the issues, and we tried to raise them the best we could. But I believe now at the moment things are falling on deaf ears. You say there about a scheme. I don't know. Who can survive now at this stage? You've guys, as John said, they're thinking about selling their boats, but the problem is the market there. Who's going to buy them? All the other schemes that went to buy there, the Brexit money and everything else. I mean, the whole of the inshore fleet got nothing. They got pennies, nothing, absolute nothing. They were completely excluded from it. So, I think Hilde Octon raised, I think she mentioned grants. Sure, I mean, BIM said the same at that meeting. We met with the minister and the department about the new EMF AF funding, where they were going to pull out these grants. and some of them were going to be coming in at 80% and 100%, I think I read. But sure, Jesus, if the lads had the money to put up first, if you're going to grant aid something at 100% and expect the person to come up with, just say the item is €1,000, take an EPERB or whatever, and it comes in at €1,000. If the guy has to put up the €1,000 to get 100% grant, does that make a lot of logical sense? Like, if he had the €1,000 to begin with, he mightn't be in the problems he's in at the moment, and we wouldn't be screeching. So I don't know. It's just hard to.
Like what we're looking for is business supports, because we are businesses. At the end of the day, we're fishing businesses, and like Hildegard Naughton spoke about grant funding. Like it's not, they're not giving us any funding, they're not giving us any direct financial support. They're going to tell us that if you spend €100, we'll give you €80 your own money back, and you'll be €20 less well off. So how does that support guys that can't get by, guys that can't pay their diesel bills, guys that can't pay their bait bills? You know, if your business is suffering financially, spending your own money that you don't have, I don't see how that's going to help you.
You can look at where they're now going to give support to hospitality. Like I read it. I read a tweet where it from Simon Harris, which said that he's going to give business supports to small businesses. And when I clicked on the article, I found out it is only for hospitality. And you're going like small businesses, other small businesses in the country. There's a lot more than just hospitality that needs the help. The farmers, when they needed fodder, even though there wasn't a shortage of fodder in the country, the department went out and bought fodder.
There seems to be a real hatred for this industry, that they do not, the inshore sector especially, they do not want to support us in any way. Like when it came to Brexit, like we're all part of the fishing industry. There was 120 million spent between 3 tie-up schemes, a liquidity scheme for the RSW vessels, and a decommissioning scheme to help the offshore sector, let's say. And fair play to them, they deserved it and they needed it. When it comes to quota division in Ireland, if you're over 55 foot, you get 1 ton. Say if you're under 55 ton, you get a half a ton. It's like a 2-to-1 ratio the way it's divided. It's been that way for a long time. In regards to whitefish, pelagic is different. But when it came to the division of Brexit fund, bar funding, we were told we weren't entitled to anything. We were told we weren't affected, we weren't entitled to anything, we couldn't get anything. The minister met us in Dublin and said he'd secured exchequer funding for a scheme for us, but we were excluded from the bar funding. And if the inshore sector had got half of what the offshore sector got, it would work out at 60 million. The offshore sector got 120 million. If we got the half of that, that would have been 60 million. And there would have, I think, I don't know, was it over 120 million went back or something?
Yeah,
of that bar funding that the minister had went back unspent. So they could have spent 60 million on the inshore sector and still have given money back. Like that was EU money. It was money that was given to the country to support and allocated to the fishing sector. And 95% of the fishing sector was told we weren't entitled to anything.
Say that we called that your sector of the industry would not be affected by Brexit. You know, you're on the same market as all the other
quotas
folks.
Are a national asset.
Yeah.
And those payments were to vessels for losses into the future. It wasn't that those vessels had operated at a loss before Brexit. It was for losses going into the future. The RSW liquidity scheme paid something like 25 or 26 million for quota losses in the future. It's quota that basically wasn't going to come into the country. So it wasn't what happened in the past. It was what was going to happen into the future, that we all were entitled to those quotas and access to those quotas. But we were told, no, we weren't. We weren't affected. So about national assets, but a lot of those national quotas have been privatized by government policy. And then we have the case where there's money going back unspent. we have a case where we have the MFAF funding that goes from 2023 to 2027, and they haven't started spending that money yet because they said we wanted to use as much as the bar funding and everything else as we could before we started spending that money. So we've had a case of we've funds that should have been there from 2023 that should be that we would have been able to access. They hadn't released because they wanted to use bar funding that we were told we were excluded from. So
it must be mentally draining sitting there and just watching this happen, you know, right before your eyes. Loads of excuses that you shouldn't be getting. It must be just.
We don't even get excuses. We just get told I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. We're working on something. Like how long do we have? Is he going to sit listening without coming up with something? All right, brilliant if they come out with something, but guys need to see it. Guys need to know there's something coming.
Yeah, and they need to know as well that, you know, that past this, if any supports come, they need to also know that that the department is going to support them and the fight against offshore one and marine parks and everything else that has to be introduced according to the European Union. You know, that's another thing that's coming up against the fishermen, isn't it? Especially inshore.
Yeah, there seems to be. I mean, what are there lessons learned? Like, I mean, the issues, the biggest issues, I think, there are lack of consultation, and I mean, it's basically, it's in a nutshell. No matter what, if you go RE National Park, whatever, I mean, it's just a foregone conclusion that the fishermen aren't going to be included. It's as if they don't exist, and it seems to be. It seems to be the same in everything. It's we talk about RE, talk about national parks, talk about support, talk about funding. I mean, it's like they're not there. I mean, the inshore sector has been there since the beginning of time. I mean, it's every one of them is a small business. They're family run. Everything that's earned comes in the front door. It goes out. It pays bills locally. The monies are left in the local shops, the local merchants, the local heating companies. I mean, it's how rural Ireland works. And it appears to me that we're not seen as small businesses, definitely. We're seen as non-existent, basically. Complete lack of consultation. I suppose consultation is key in everything, and I think myself that insurers, I don't know, it seems to be a kind of a forgotten sector, and I think they're forgetting about the wrong sector because, I mean, the small fisherman and the small farmer, in my book, have kept any country going, and this model that seems to be the new kid in the block now, where they want the big everything, the big supermarket, the big block of fishing boats or whatever else, you know, the small man seems to be completely forgotten.
Yeah, it definitely does feel the way you call it, that the fishing communities are being pushed out and replaced by coastal communities, which are, to me, as a different thing. Fishing community is where, as you're talking about there, where, you know, you catch the fish, it generates an income, that circular income within the community itself. But coastal communities, to me, seems to be more tourist driven. They might want a few boats sitting in the harbour, but don't really want you to be doing anything.
But then all these restaurants and everyone else in these areas want the locally caught fish that we can't provide. It's got to this stage now, as I described it to somebody, was what we're catching we can't sell, and what we could sell we're not allowed to catch. So to think that the system's rigged against you, you couldn't call somebody a conspiracy theorist to think that the whole deck stacked against you. when you're steaming out over, like I spent all winter steaming out over thousands of tons of fish that I didn't have access to because I didn't have so-called track record in the inshore sector to catch them, to go and catch fish pots when I could be fishing at the mouth of the harbour. But I don't have the track record, even though it's a national quota, it's a national asset, but it's been privatised away from most people. So when you're in the situation where what's there, you can't catch it, even though you could sell it. And then as we're getting to the stage now, what we're catching, we can't sell because of the markets. Like there's no diversification in the inshore anymore. And like actions speak louder than words. It's fine to say, oh, I hear you and we're listening to you and we're working on something. The actions just aren't there to back it up. So I don't know where we go from here.
I think John touched on a very good point there as well too, Oliver, with regard to markets. Like, I mean, guys are taking it upon themselves there now to kind of create their own market. We have Board B here in the country, seems to work very well for farming and stuff like this. But when it comes to market awareness or public awareness of an actual product, Inshore is selling, I don't know. There seems to be very little public awareness. You look at the price of fish at the moment, look at $14.50 a kilo for lobster. I mean, any family in the country can have a lobster dinner tonight. Probably as cheap as you can buy whatever in Lidl's per kg. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's no longer a niche product. It's €14.50. It's no longer a niche market either. Like, guys are taking it upon themselves there now to trying to market their own product. When was the last time we seen anything on the TV with regard to Board B or promoting Inshore or promoting? There was a program there, or there was a quick ad on there a few years back about a picture of a brown crab or something like that. But I mean, it seems to be everything into the country. But we're an island nation, and we're probably selling the finest food in the world. And no matter where in the world you'll go, Irish shellfish is key. We can't market it in our own country. Something radically wrong.
Well, it's almost, I keep saying this, it's almost an embarrassment when you look at a country like Norway or Iceland and the number of small boats that they can support. I know their waters are probably a lot richer than what ours is in a sense, but you know, it's absolutely amazing, and the way they operate and the way that they're supported by the government and actually encouraged. You see there what you called every summer they have a young person's scheme to get them out on boats. You see that in Holland, and you see that in other countries. And in this country here, there's no incentive being created to try and attract young people to the industry.
I mean, sure, who'd want to come into this industry now, Oliver? I mean, I don't want to sound depressing or anything, but I have a young lad myself. My own son he's only home from Australia. I don't know, it's any young lad that goes into this industry now, in fairness, somebody'd want to sit down and have a serious think about it. I don't know, the other countries, they seem to see the importance of Inshore. In this country, we seem to be forgetting about it. It's a completely forgotten sector altogether.
What do you need right now? If the minister is listening, if the commission is listening in Europe, what is it that you want? What is it you really need at this moment in time, and to be putting it on the table now, not in 6 months' time when half the industries, half the sectors wiped out?
Direct financial aid is what is needed right now. Like, we've come through COVID without supports, we've come through Brexit without supports, we're living through the crisis, the energy crisis due to the war in Ukraine without supports. Those three things, there was money there for that we didn't get. The EU, we could have used EU money to support the industry. We were told, we specifically asked, not last year, the year before last, in Limerick, I was at a meeting with the minister, I asked about, excuse me, fuel support for the inshore sector. We were told he wasn't. He gave an extra month's tie-up scheme and allowed the whitefish vessels to tie up for an extra month instead of giving a fuel support, which was totally useless to the inshore sector that we couldn't avail of. So he says he didn't give a fuel support, he gave an extra month's tie-up. So the larger vessels again got supported where we didn't. We need direct financial supports now, and going forward, we need fair and equal access to quotas. We can't have a case of where we're told you can only, it's not that we're told we can only fish crab and lobster and static here. It's because we're being excluded from other fisheries. Fisheries that, like, we're told we can't have, we're being excluded due to what's called track record. We don't have track record. We have historical records. They've literally wrote history books about inshore fishing in this country, and we're told we don't have a so-called track record because they don't have a record fishing us for us fishing over a couple of years over the history. Like it's mind-boggling. It's insulting to be told we don't have a track record, therefore we can't access national quotas, national assets.
Well, as you said, sorry.
We have an industry, Oliver, that has lost every fishery that we've ever had. We've lost a bass fishery, we've lost a salmon fishery, we've lost a Neil fishery, we've lost a herring fishery, we've lost a mackerel fishery. We're getting crumbs off the table for a hook and line mackerel fishery. We've lost now a pollock fishery, and you have every single boat in the country is funneled into one fishery. And I'm repeating myself here again, but we highlighted this a few years back, all right? And in July 2022, we asked the minister to put a subgroup together so that we could actually sit down and discuss where we're going. And we're still waiting for that subgroup. I mean, the importance isn't there. I mean, so that's why we thought in our meeting back in November, I mean, nearly 2 years later, we thought that maybe they didn't understand the importance, and we tried to reiterate that through NIFA at these meetings. And I don't want to say it's fallen in deaf ears. The people are listening, but I don't know, do they grasp the importance of it? Is it going to be too late by the time they do? That's my concerns.
Well, you're talking about fisheries there. The minister says there's a hard-won fishery for the spur dog, but nobody can take advantage of because of the rules and regulations. You know, it's showing you where the thought is really going into. That the thought isn't going into what they're doing for the inshore.
That's about the only thing you can't blame them for that, because that's an EU regulation, and like it's ludicrous when you think of it. You spend your whole time being told to protect the juveniles, protect the spawnings, protect the small fish, let them grow big, and then catch them. But now, due to EU regulation, you have a case of where if you catch the smaller spur dogs, you must land them. That's the law. And if you catch the larger spur dogs, whether they're dead or alive, you must return them directly to the sea. So you have a case of where the whole thing's been turned against what you're supposed to be doing. You're like larger mess sizes, bigger. That's the road that the EU has brought us down with, between square mesh panels, increasing in mesh sizes and everything else. And now we're told, sorry boys, the one fishery that could be of a benefit to the sector, to all sectors of the industry, and they said, no, you can't catch the larger fish. Catch any, whatever you catch, small, fine, land them, but not the large fish that there's a market for. So
the problems, Oliver, too, in a lot of these cases, if you lose a market, now the people that have fish dogs traditionally down through the years way back, that was a big fishery. All right, there was a lot of money made out of dogs. There was a fierce market there. If you lose a market, it's very hard to get it back. And the prime example of that is the Chinese market for crab. We lost the Chinese market due to the candium levels in the crab, and that void was filled elsewhere. There's Russian crab being sold in there now, snow crab, king crab, all this kind of stuff have been sold in there from Russian factories, and they're selling the cheapest chips. Even though some of our processors are sending out crab again, it's impossible to get back into that market. If you lose a market, or if you, I mean, it's common sense, I suppose. If you're going to starve a market, they're going to find fish somewhere else. Like, but if you lose it, it's very hard to get back in again. So
Well, that's true. If there's a void in the market, somebody will come in and fill it, and you'll never get it back. That's something that should be acknowledged as well. Like, which isn't. As you said, there's not the support there from the bodies in this country to make these things to safeguard these things.
I don't know if one thing comes out of this. I mean, just that people realise the importance and the urgency that's here, because I mean, we have a secretary there in NIFA and fantastic. She's fantastic at her job. She's fantastic at altogether, Avril. But I mean, Lord God, that girl has getting phone calls on a daily basis. I don't know how she does it. Like, I mean, people are at wit's end here. If anything comes out of this, if they can just realize the urgency and the importance of this, like, because this isn't putting a lot of people in good places. I mean, you have young guys there with new boats, young guys with big mortgages, young families. I mean, a lot of people in a lot of bad places. I mean, when you look at the mental health side of this, I think it's crazy.
Well, I think if you were a young person who invested in a new purchase to better yourself in the industry, and all of a sudden then you find out that the Pollock has been cut from under you, there's no supports for you and anything, I wouldn't know how you could cope with having to pay back a loan on a boat when the future's so bleak.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying earlier, like how it just appeared overnight. You know, there was no warning. There was no. Normally, if something's going to happen, there'll be wind or there'll be something. Will say something about months prior to it happening. Like, I mean, people will actually get wind of it that it is actually going to happen. This happened overnight. Like, I mean, the Pollock fishery was, I think it was hopefully not, but the last nail in the coffin here, because without it, I can't see an industry that's going to survive, because other than Pollock fishery, we've been calling to reopen these fisheries for years. We were calling for years to reopen the dog fishery. Credit for the minister, it was actually reopened, but we can't find markets now for the fish, because the sizes that are there are not appropriate for the market. The market is looking for something else. So, but the salmon fishery, we've been crying for that to be reopened. That was closed. Guys were told temporary when it did happen. At this stage, it's fairly temporary, all right. Every other fishery is lost. Every other fishery is gone. I can't see them reopening. So the Pollock was the only diversification. I think it's the new buzzword. So that was the only thing that inshore fishermen could diversify into, because their market share of anything else isn't there.
There's not a shortage of fish out there, is there? You know, you could diversify.
Fish aren't the problem. Markets.
What we're allowed to catch is the problem.
Yeah.
It's like looking at bluefin tuna swimming about. We had the case, there were 16. The hook and line fisheries was restricted to 400 tons. They brought in more restrictions to cut down the catches. There was only 250 odd ton of the 400 ton caught last year. It's going to be worse this year. Last year there was 1,600 ton of mackerel, national mackerel uncaught. We have only a small quota. I think it's 2,200 tons of northwest herring last year. They were given out when the inshore sector reached and exceeded what was allocated to them. Like, we're talking when the inshore sector exceeded them, the 350 ton that was allocated 95% of the fleet by 50 or 60 tons, yet still in all 600 or 800 tons of that quota went uncaught. So fish isn't the problem. Like, when you have 1,600 ton of mackerel uncaught, 800 tons of northwest herring out of 2,200 tons uncaught, we're knee deep in tuna that the minister has some allergic reaction to asking for a quota for. We had a situation where the UK got, I think, 64 or 65 tons of bluefin tuna quota last year, which was equivalent to 0.25% of the European quota. Like, even if the inshore sector Ireland had 100 tons of bluefin quota allocated to it, you're talking 0.3% of the entire European quota. Fish isn't a problem.
Fish isn't a problem, and
just one other point, like, because
yeah,
it was something I'd like to raise, because it was one of the most insulting things I've heard told to us to date, is that when we brought up the issue of the Pollock being closed, the minister basically turned around and says, well, nobody told him that there was an issue with the Pollock being closed. Like, when you have a fishery minister who doesn't understand how important that the white Pollock is to the inshore sector, that's an issue. Like, when you're talking, like, somebody who is in his job and doesn't know how important the white Pollock is to the inshore sector, well, that tells you a lot about what he knows about the inshore sector.
Thank you very much, John and Eddie, for joining me. And listen, we hope this message gets across, and we hope that people in power can see the frustration and the roadblocks that's been put in front of a very important sector, not just for for the rural economy, but it's an important for all of the country, because small farmers and small fishermen is what made the country and what keeps the real heart in the country.
Can I just say there as well, Oliver, before we head away? Basically, if people can shop local, it would be, as in Inshore, it would be a great help to a lot of the inshore boats who started their own markets. They've had to do it themselves. They're selling through social media and stuff like that. So if people can shop local, they're buying the finest shellfish in the world, and they're buying it as cheap as burger and chips. So
even if they could go to their local fishmongers and these places and ask, can they get it for them?
But if they do,
people start asking for something, if you create a demand, we can fill the supply.
And you can barely get fresher food than fish caught in your own area and landed on your own doorstep.
Walk in the door behind you.
But it's tough when we have to ask to bring public awareness to it. There are groups that are being well paid that should be doing this job in my book. And another thing is, if they are going shopping, please check that it's Irish fish, because Irish Inshore is
on a tricolour doesn't mean it's Irish. Check the back.
Yeah, it's in
bottom right hand side in the back of the package will tell you where it comes from.
Alaskan Pollock isn't Irish.
No.
And it's not cod.
And Alaskan Pollock's probably not the furthest away seafood that's coming into the country either.
Definitely not. So visit a pier local to you, inshore boats, plenty of supply, plenty of social media sites now where guys are selling their own fish. It will be much appreciated by Inshore.